Ever since my mother passed away, an odd change has come over my father. Except during meals, he doesn't come out of his room. He doesn't let anyone enter his room either. Sometimes, at night, I hear whispering from his room, as if he's talking and laughing with someone. When I ask him about it, he says, "Your mother came last night. I was talking to her." I thought perhaps he still hadn't gotten over her death, and that's why he was acting so strangely. He needs much more food than before. I'm not complaining about the amount of food, but he eats 4 times what a normal person would. His madness is increasing day by day. It's been 2 months since my mother died. In these 2 months, he hasn't gone outside even once. He hasn't seen daylight. Despite my best efforts, I haven't been able to get him out of the house. My name is Afrin. We are 1 brother and 1 sister. My brother stays in the college hostel for his studies. My father and I live at home. 2 months ago, my mother suddenly passed away in her sleep due to a stroke. Losing her plunged our lives into darkness. My brother and I have managed to cope with the loss, but my father hasn't. He loved her very much. Ever since I can remember, I never saw them argue. They never even had a disagreement. If there were an example of a happy couple, it would be my parents. I study in a madrasa, in the 2nd year of alim. Therefore, I don't leave the house without a burqa. I try to adhere to Islamic principles. I pray 5 times a day and sometimes offer tahajjud prayers late at night. One such night, while I was praying tahajjud, I suddenly heard a woman sobbing from my father's room. Someone was crying softly. I finished my prayer and slowly went towards my father's room. I pressed my ear to the door to listen. I heard a woman crying and pleading, "Please don't call me anymore. It's very painful for me to come here." The one who took me away gets very angry about this. My father was saying, "I can't live without seeing you. You must come. I have no one in this world but you." Hearing this, the woman started crying even more. I was terrified by what I was hearing. Who was my father talking to? How did a woman get into his room? I nervously called out, "Father, are you okay? Who are you talking to so late at night?" Suddenly, the woman's crying stopped. When I called out again, the door to the room opened with a bang. A dark shadow quickly left the room. As the shadow left, the door shut again, and it disappeared in front of the main door. I felt a cold sensation all over my body, as if a block of ice had passed by me. I stood there, frozen with fear. What was that? Why doesn't my father let anyone into his room? I was about to call my father again when I sensed someone behind me. There was a rustling sound, like the sound of new clothes. Fear parched my throat. I know that the jinn are a creation of Allah, mentioned in the Quran with a surah named after them. But I have never had the misfortune of seeing one myself. Tonight, it seems, is my end. Someone is definitely behind me. I can't even make a sound. Slowly, I turned around, and what I saw made me unable to stand any longer. My mother, wearing a new red sari, was standing there smiling. Terrified, I burst into tears. In a very calm voice, my mother said, "Why are you bothering your father so late at night? Go to sleep." My vision gradually went dark. I don't remember what happened after that. When I woke up in the morning, I found myself lying on my bed in my room, with the door closed from the inside. As I rubbed my eyes, I tried to recall the events of the night. What had happened? It must have been a dream. Since I was in my bed and the door was locked, it had to be a bad dream. Looking at the clock, I saw it was almost 10 o'clock. I quickly got up and freshened up. I had a class at 10:30. I noticed that my father's room door was slightly ajar. On a whim, I peeked in to see what he was doing. He was standing by the window, looking outside intently. Since my mother's death, the father I once knew now seemed unfamiliar. He hardly spoke to anyone. After having breakfast, I left breakfast for my father on the table and headed out for the madrasa. Before leaving, I called out from outside, "Father, I'm going to the madrasa. There's breakfast on the table, please eat." I left the house and got into a rickshaw. Just then, out of nowhere, Galib Bhaiya hurriedly jumped into the rickshaw with me. Angrily, I said, Galib Bhaiya, what is this? Get out, or I'll gather a crowd and shout. Galib Bhaiya grinned and said, Afrin, why do you act like this? I also need to go near your madrasa for some work. But I don't have rickshaw fare. Whether you go alone or with me, the fare is the same. So why waste a seat? And you know, wastefulness is the brother of Satan. Of course, you won't be a brother, you'll be a sister. Furious, I pushed him out of the rickshaw and said, I am the devil myself. If there's any wasting, I'll do it. You cannot come with me. You rascal. I'll get you arrested for eve-teasing. Galib Bhaiya, laughing, said, if you think mentioning the police will scare me, then you're absolutely right. There's no need for these complaints. I'm leaving anyway. I told the rickshaw driver, Uncle, please go. Galib Bhaiya called out from behind, but remember, Afrin, you are my personal devil. Your job is only to deceive me. That's why I never recite any prayers in front of you, just in case you get hurt. I smiled and said, completely crazy. Galib Bhaiya is actually a very good guy. Despite his family's immense wealth, he never boasts about it. He prefers to live simply. Even though he has his own car, he always tries to share a rickshaw with me. I know he loves me a lot. It's not a recent thing, but since we were in 9th grade. It's not that I don't like him. Anyone would want to love a guy like him. I just don't understand why he is so attached to me. I like him a lot too, but I've never let him know that. I always behave rudely with him, trying to maintain a distance. Our families don't match. I'm from a middle-class family, while he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. So, it's not possible. But Galib Bhaiya refuses to understand that. By the time my class ended and I left the madrasa, it was 2 p.m. Outside, I saw Galib Bhaiya standing across the street. This is his daily routine, so I ignored him and started walking home. Galib Bhaiya ran over and started walking beside me. I didn't say anything because I knew he wouldn't leave even if I did. Galib Bhaiya said, Afrin, how long will you keep me waiting? I know you love me too. So why do you treat me like this? In a very calm voice, I said, Galib Bhaiya, you know it's not possible. You belong to a palace, and we to a hut. These relationships, though sweet in the beginning, end in much pain. Why don't you understand that? Galib Bhaiya didn't say anything. He just turned and left. I watched him go. Usually, he chats with me all the way home. Why did he leave like that today? I felt sad. As I started walking again, I suddenly saw my father standing a little distance away. When I called out to him, he gave me a strange smile and quickly walked to the middle of the road, where a car came and hit him with a thud. I screamed, Father! Everyone around me came running to see what had happened. I noticed there hadn't actually been an accident. Did I see it wrong? I clearly saw my father. People were asking me what happened. Without answering anyone, I quickly walked home. The weather was getting dark. It looked like it was going to rain heavily. Black clouds were covering the sky. I felt disoriented. I couldn't remember where I was going or where my house was. My head was spinning. Everything around me seemed to be swirling. After a lot of effort, I remembered my address. But I had forgotten where my house was. I stopped someone on the road and asked, Brother, can you tell me where this address is? The man, a little annoyed, said, You're asking for the address of the house you're standing in front of. Are you crazy or what? The man walked away after saying this. I came to my senses and looked around to see everything was normal. The weather was fine and sunny. So what had happened to me all this time? I was standing right in front of my house and couldn't recognize it. I hurried inside. We live on the 2nd floor of a 5-story building. As I was going up the stairs, I noticed from a distance that the door was open. I clearly remember locking it when I left. So, had my father gone out? I quickly entered the house and saw my father sitting at the dining table. As soon as he saw me, he smiled warmly and said, Why are you so late? Come, my dear, I prepared food for you. Eat. I was very surprised. Tears welled up in my eyes. Today, after 2 months, my father spoke to me. he seemed completely normal. His smile was still just as it used to be. Feeling emotional, I approached my father, and he stood up, lifting the lid of a small bowl on the table, and said, "See how it turned out." I looked at the bowl and froze. I couldn't move my feet. No words came out of my mouth. Inside the bowl were 3 large, bloody eyes. It seemed as if they had just been gouged out. I looked at my father and saw him staring at me with a terrifying smile.